We are back with more NFL coverage, and this week has been so stacked in overall developments around the league between all of the roster cuts and different trades that we have 4 different waves of NFL news in just one video. So to get straight into it, we would start out with a trade on August 24th in which the Chiefs got back a player that they are well accustomed to at this point, as the Jets would trade Derek Nottie and a conditional 2027 7th rounder to Kansas City in exchange for a 2027 6th rounder. It's just crazy because I was literally talking about all of their moves in between getting both Jawan Briggs and Harrison Phillips as defensive tackles. And as I was looking through all that, I saw that Derek Nottie was the 3rd string guy on the team. I noted it, I called it out, and little did I know that less than just a few hours after putting that video out, he would go right back to where he's been for the majority of his career. I mean, they essentially don't lose much by doing this. You're getting the man for free, and although he may not be a player that contributes much when it comes to the counting numbers, he's been a staple of their team for this long. He's won 3 Super Bowls with them, so why not bring that piece back for continuity's sake? I mean, you virtually give up nothing. Like, it is all dependent on how the Jets perform, so it may not even have the same value that it likely could if they manage to be a remotely good football team. That was just a very wild turn of events. But hey, I guess even though Derek Nottie for a time might have had on a Jets uniform in practice and stuff, it's not going to go down in the record books that he was ever an official member of the team when it comes to actual appearances in games. I still don't know what that means for his tenure in Kansas City, though, because from what I saw, his usage did take a hit last season, which is why I guess they initially decided to move on from him in the first place. But seeing as they have lost some of their defenders, say for Felix Anudike-Uzomah, for example, being out for the season now, he might be able to get some of his rotational snaps back. And honestly, the Chiefs have pretty good defensive linemen as it is. So you're literally just asking Nottie to do the same thing he's always done. And I'm sure he's going to excel in that role, like he has for the most part. As for some other cuts now, a slew of them, starting with the Eagles waiving Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Not surprised by that, especially when you consider that they had Tanner McKee make the roster. In the snaps that DTR had in the preseason, man, he just did not perform well at all. So that's a person that you can afford to move on from. Just think about that. All that movement with former AFC North quarterbacks like both Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Kenny Pickett being parts of that team and now just getting completely rerouted elsewhere. I don't know what this means for Dorian Thompson-Robinson because he's one of the older, when he was picked up, he was one of the older rookies at the time. He's never really broken through as a starting caliber player, and now as a backup on a pretty solid Eagles roster, you can't even make that team. Another team might take a chance on him, but I don't know how much more he'll really get. Speaking of the Browns, they would cut Tyler Huntley, and they would have, oh my goodness, in light of that, they would eventually state that their starting depth chart for the season at quarterback would be Joe Flacco at 1, Dylan Gabriel at 2, and Shedeur Sanders at 3. I figured that Tyler Huntley wasn't going to last in this system. Like, he just did not put on a good showing towards the end of the preseason. Like, yes, he's an established veteran and he can be a solid backup, but he will never turn into anything more than that. And the fact that some of the same flaws in his game continue to show up, even with him being an established veteran in the league, it does not show the promise that the team would like to see in their next quarterback, at least. Like, I just credit them at least for trying to give the younger guys in the room a chance. Because to continue cycling through older veterans that you know are not the long-term solution, like, this is the situation that the Browns have found themselves in consistently. Yes, they've had years where they have experimented with younger quarterbacks, say, like Baker Mayfield. But outside of that, they are just so stubborn in their ways when it comes to trying to push the envelope and get established veterans who aren't necessarily the most spectacular players at their position, but who at least offer them stability, in theory, at the position. And yet, more often than not, it crumbles immediately. I mean, the fact that Derek Anderson with the team even managed to make a Pro Bowl as a quarterback for them was ridiculous in the first place. And even he fizzled out because he ended up becoming way too predictable. So, I can see why they would make that move to get rid of Tyler Huntley. I understand it totally. And you know, hey, Joe Flacco, again, same thing. Maybe he's not a long-term solution, but he has proven himself. He is the most experienced by far and most accomplished by far quarterback in the locker room. That was not a surprise when it was detailed that that was the decision they were going to go with. I'm not even going to get into what it means for the rookies, but they have a much better chance with having this overall room get trimmed down just a little bit. The Cowboys would release La'el Collins. Ain't that some shit? Maybe they think that their offensive line is in good condition, but do you just understand how crazy this sounds? And oh, trust me, by the end of this video, we'll get into it. Because, yeah, as we continue to go across the days, man, crazy shit would go down in Dallas between the whole media tour and the eventual result that Jerry Jones and that brass would face. But let's just put it like this. You sign La'el Collins in the midst of all this shit going on with Micah Parsons, and you give him a much better chance of making the roster on day one and getting his money up front. And then you just cut him? Like, you really made the choice to go back and re-sign him for the sole purpose of just trying to throw it in Micah Parsons' face? Is that what you're telling me right now? What was the point of getting La'el Collins in this storybook return and reunion of sorts if he didn't even end up making the final roster of the team? And he only got signed like a few weeks back. Like right around the time the Micah Parsons chatter started ramping up, you sign him. And just like that, he's gone. That doesn't even make sense, bro. It just doesn't. But again, like Jerry Jones will continue to tell you, he loves the art of the deal. Yeah, okay, we'll see about that by the end of this one. Because, oh boy, they would end up taking a massive loss as a result of his stupidity. This just being the first step. Even though it doesn't compare at all to the things that would happen next. But we'll save that for later. The Bills would release Trey Herndon, backup cornerback for them. I don't really know why they ended up getting him in the first place. I mean, I think they just came through my phone mentioning that Trey White is still hurt a little bit. So maybe they were looking for someone to plug and play. But I don't know why you think that Herndon was your choice there. Like, yes, he's a veteran cornerback, but even as a sort of role player, he's not a person that can be relied on all that much. I just don't understand them taking a chance on him. That blows my mind. I'm not going to lie to you. The Eagles would certainly get active in the early week, making a slew of trades, but this would be the first one. They would trade Darian Kennard, I think a backup offensive tackle, to the Packers in exchange for a 2027 sixth-rounder. This feels like a bit of a nothing trade, but honestly, the Packers deserve it if they're trying to do talks with the Eagles. Like, I don't think they should be trying to help them at all with the kind of shit that they've been trying to pull against them this entire offseason. But in all seriousness, I think the Packers are pretty well set as far as their offensive line goes, to be honest. If you need rotational guys, I guess Kennard could serve as that. But even then, man, between them signing like Zach Tom to a contract extension, I believe, in this offseason, and having a lot of their other guys like Elton Jenkins shored up for the long term, there's no need for you to really invest all that much in a tackle. So I don't really expect Kennard to get a bunch of playing time with this team. He's just not a highly valued rotational piece at this point. And honestly, that's okay. The Eagles must have felt the same way because, again, Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata have those tackle positions on lock. There was just no way that Kennard was going to be able to usurp potential percentages of snaps from either one of them. And even if Lane Johnson were to retire within the next couple of years, that probably could be likely. In fact, I mean, he's getting older. The fact that he's still as elite as he is at 35 years old is a testament to how hard this man fucking works. No question about it. But, you know, he getting up there. So he could bow out of the game at any moment. They'd probably be looking for a far different contingency plan than Kennard at this point. I'm sure that they're going to have the draft capital to do so anyways. So they can live with shedding him off. That didn't necessarily stop them from getting one back because in a later trade, they would actually acquire Fred Johnson from the Jags and send a 2026 seventh rounder over to Jacksonville. I think that Fred Johnson was actually a player who was originally a member of the Eagles team and had been a part of the roster when they won the Super Bowl in February. Suppose he was a free agent and they didn't pick up his rights. He tested free agency, the Jags picked him up, and I guess they just decided that he was not going to be a good fit for their team. They send him back over to Philadelphia. And, again, same thing. Because of how stacked the tackle positions are, I don't envision that he'll get a lot of opportunities to play this season. But, you know, as, you know, he does continue to progress in age, like, injuries are obviously going to be a likely thing. So I guess maybe they recognized after that Kennard trade that, you know what, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt, okay, to have some sort of depth behind there. Now, there will surely, if Johnson was to appear for any one of those guys in a game, there's going to be a drop-off in talent. And you know what? It is what it is. But you got to have those extra bodies on the offensive line because all it takes is just one snap of the ball. And legitimately, anything can happen. They could be engaged in a block, and the next thing you know, their leg is getting caught in between oncoming defenders and other linemen even at times. They could potentially step on a teammate in an accidental way. Just a number of different miscues can ail even the best offensive lineman out there. You always got to have backup in a situation like that. The Patriots would confirm that they were willing to move on from Kyle Duggar. And with most of these reports, as well as I'll state right here, a lot of this information is coming from both Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport. There's no in between with it. Yes, other insiders have probably gotten access to this information over time, but when it comes to breaking the news, Schefter and Rappaport have been on it this entire time. This would come from Rappaport, and I guess it did make sense, but he would offer a little more clarity, because apparently it was true that Kyle Duggar was being treated like a second-string strong safety, but he had also been hurt during that time and wasn't playing at 100%. So naturally, even if they are still trying to trade him, maybe they want to hike up his value. So they're just trying to get him some early reps, get him back to better game shape and better condition, so that come week 1, he can start executing in the elite ways that he has as a run-stopping, hard-hitting strong safety. He's definitely weaker in coverage, and I think, with some of the moves that they've made in terms of getting guys like Robert Spillane and obviously Christian Gonzalez through the draft, they have a few corners returning who are way better in terms of stopping the run or going out in coverage and locking down people. And Kyle Duggar combining a sort of drop-off along with his age at the moment, he can still be a good safety, but I guess they feel like they can find some quality value out of him. They want to ramp up his activity and get him in the best shape imaginable so that he can perform off the rip. And if that does happen, that only increases his trade value by the trade deadline. So it would be a much easier process to get him off the team then. And, again, it is still tough to think that he could end up getting traded just like that. But if he can showcase his skill set, then I'm sure that a team in desperate need of a strong safety would be looking for a player like him. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me in terms of strong safeties. It wouldn't surprise me if you heard teams like the Bucks, for example, since they recently, later on in the week, would cut Shallow Sanders. You could argue that they'd be looking for a strong safety option. And whether he ends up, if he does get traded, hypothetically, if he were to end up as a starter or a bench player there, he'd be far more serviceable than some of their other options at that position. Because Zion McCollum, I don't know how they have lasted for that long with having him as a legitimate starter on the roster. He is not that caliber of player right now. So maybe all this is a smokescreen and he eventually stays with the team and this is a non-story. But if he does end up getting traded and his value is good enough, I think Tampa Bay would be a optimal location for him to choose here. Tanner McKee would undergo, he probably is going to undergo surgery for this, but right now he has a fractured thumb. So his status for week 1 is still in question per Adam Schefter, and I think that he would probably be fine anyways. I don't think he would be expected to get any reps in the game. Again, any number of things could happen, so who am I to constantly assume that Jalen Hurts would make it through week 1 all fine? You would hope that happens, but you just never know. Nevertheless, they should be able to handle business in week 1 without Tanner McKee. especially since it's against the Cowboys. I mean, yes, the Cowboys were dealing with a slew of injuries in both matchups last season, in fact, but hey, they still put belt to ass on both occasions. Why would I expect anything different from them this year? With virtually the same rosters returning, obviously with some losses, but of course, those losses have freed up a tremendous amount of potential in that locker room at the same time. Not for this man, though, because the Saints would release Cam Akers. Now, I was shocked to see that he was actually a part of their preseason roster after watching a couple of games of him play. But yeah, he just wasn't going to be capable enough of making this roster. I figured it from the moment he got there. There was just not really a chance for him. I don't know. They prefer different options right now. And Cameron Akers, like, he's lost a little bit of his step. There's no question about that. I mean, injuries have definitely gotten a hold of him for sure. And even still, even with some of the more basic things you are asking him to do, he just doesn't provide enough skill on that front to make him a reliable piece for the roster. It's an understandable cut. I can't blame them for this. The Dolphins would also, to cap off this first wave, release Mike Hilton. Why they felt that this is a good decision, I don't know. Like, yes, again, as I did state when I was initially covering them signing him, less than, again, literally a month ago, right? You pick him up, and you kind of have to, because you do not have cornerbacks right now. And you know what? Like, literally, Kader Coho's out for the season, and again, all of your corners on the roster from last year are either hurt right now or just completely on another team, like Jalen Ramsey. You thought it was a good decision, a truly great decision, to remove one of the cornerbacks who probably had a great chance of making the roster. Like I said, he is an established veteran. He knows what he's doing, and he could easily emerge as the leader of that team on the defensive side of the football, something you are desperately looking for on a team that, outside of Minkah Fitzpatrick, like, their defense is highly inconsistent. They're young in their front seven, and a little bit undersized when you think about David Long Jr. Like, you need as many cornerbacks as you can get. I don't understand. Like, they could have had double the fun back there. Because, to be honest, yes, Mike Hilton would get cut. They would make a solid decision later on. I won't lie. But it's like, still, outside of that, at cornerback, you have Jack Jones, Juju Brents from, I think, the Colts, and then Cam Smith. But you think that all of those guys collectively are much better currently than Mike Hilton has always been in the NFL. That's just ridiculous to me. I don't understand, bro. Like, you gotta truly be off something to convince me that those guys are better options than Mike Hilton currently is. Man. So while that first wave of action was definitely solid, to say the least, it would certainly level up from the 25th and onward, because on that very day, the second wave would start with the end of a hold-in that had been sweeping the NFL, as the Commanders would sign Terry McLaurin to a 3-year, $96 million contract extension, making him one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. He's right behind CeeDee Lamb in that regard. And as I said immediately, it is a contract that was well-deserved. Yes, to give $33 million to a wide receiver at that position who is pretty much 30 years old at this point. It certainly comes with a risk, but Terry McLaurin has been too consistent for way too fucking long not to warrant that kind of deal being done to his benefit. And it tremendously helps the team. I mean, let's be honest. If there is one person that's the most happiest about this getting done, it is Jayden Daniels, without a shadow of doubt. Yes, Jayden Daniels had a great rookie season last year. One of the best of all time, even, as many people in the media would like to state. But again, a large factor in that was Terry McLaurin's ability to just make any number of things happen, whether it be catching contested passes, even with him standing at 6 foot tall, whether it be him extending plays with his combination of route running and speed. He was single-handedly a game changer for them and is by far their most prolific wide receiver. He's the X factor of that team. He accounted for nearly half of his touchdown passes. And if they ended up losing him again, they don't really have good quality backup plans in place of him. You know, the receivers that are under him right now could be good in their roles, but they're not going to have that same game-breaking ability that he does. And that just is a testament to how talented he really has become. Like, the debate, you know, that I guess the front office was trying to grapple with the entire time was whether or not he should be getting paid more than some of his counterparts, like, say, DK Metcalf. Again, trust me, I would know. I love DK Metcalf. No question about it. Even if Terry McLaurin isn't as physically gifted or dominant as DK Metcalf currently is, you can make the argument, and people certainly have, that he's produced at a far better rate than DK Metcalf has over the past few seasons. Now, that could be attributed to a number of different things, but the results are out in the open for you to look at. The numbers speak for themselves here. And the impact that he has on that community and the roster as a whole, it would have been a completely devastating effect if he would have ended up leaving the team. For any number of reasons. Just because you were not willing to pay him what he believed he was worth. And that's the beauty of being in a situation where a player like Jayden Daniels has proven to be enough of a transcendent talent this early on to where you can pay this kind of contract out to an individual. For all we know, this could very well be Terry McLaurin's last major contract in the league. I'm sure he'll still be a solid receiver by the time it's said and done. But while Jayden Daniels is getting paid a cheap amount of money relative to what he might be worth in the future, you may as well go all in and retain as much star talent as you can now. Because you don't want a situation to arise where Jayden Daniels just gets this massive deal prior to Terry McLaurin getting paid, and then all of a sudden you don't have the assets or enough resources to give Terry McLaurin what he's owed. You would have certainly been in trouble at that point. But that's a testament to the Commanders as well. You know, again, they've truly turned this team around. I can guarantee you that if Dan Snyder was still there, this deal probably wouldn't have gotten done at all. He would have tried to bait Terry McLaurin into doing something absolutely wild. And then he would have left. And they would have hated him even more. But Josh Harris and this team have taken a completely new direction. And sometimes part of moving forward is recognizing that you need certain relics of the past to be core staples of that organization. McLaurin is still carving out his career He's right in the middle of his prime, and he has been the bridge. If anything, he's been the bridge for the Commanders team and what it was when he first got there into what it is right now. Through it all, through all the different quarterbacks, he's done nothing but contribute. And he's not even a diva kind of wide receiver. Sure, he's not putting up the flashiest wide receiver stats like the Amon-Ra St. Browns and the Tyreek Hills and the Justin Jeffersons. But on any given Sunday or Monday, sometimes Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday, sometimes Friday, Thursdays, sometimes Saturday, he's going to give it his all on the fucking field, and he can go to toe-to-toe with any single one of them. You gotta have that quality in your locker room. So I'm glad that they keep him. You know, it's a big contract, but again, it's well earned. As for a different wide receiver, there would be rumors surrounding Jacoby Meyers, because apparently, according to Rappaport, Meyers and the Raiders are actively talking about a contract. And for whatever reason, the Raiders don't value Jacoby Meyers as much as he thinks he is at this point. And so, if that stands, he's apparently looking to be dealt elsewhere. Now, that could be huge for a number of different reasons. For Meyers, what does he do? He's in a bit of a pickle here. This man is going on 29 years old. And he, as I've mentioned in past videos talking about him, just had a career year last year. Is he willing to bet on himself and go to another team? Because the same report mentioned that, a ton of teams are hitting up the Raiders right now about Jacoby Meyers. Again, I don't view him as a prototypical number one guy. And I feel that there is an issue, where if he is a number one wide receiver on your team, you're probably not going to succeed, as evidenced by his entire Patriots tenure. Now, that could also be attributed to the quarterbacks there after Tom Brady, but it just was not a great fit at all. But as a number two guy, if he's putting up numbers like this as a complementary piece, that could help any team. And I think he would be a good addition for some of these guys out there. So they're not wrong in terms of calling about him. But the Raiders also aren't necessarily wrong in having their own mindset of the fact that, as I've also mentioned in past videos talking about Jacoby Meyers, this is just one season from him. He had not had this kind of production ever in his NFL career up to this point. So maybe you bite the bullet. Maybe you're banking on the fact that by potentially moving on from him, he will not be able to replicate the same output with a different team. And you get back a solid return while screwing over your trade partner in this situation. And that's fairly reasonable to assume. So this could be something that just goes on for quite a while until they are truly able to figure out a compromise. Because I have a feeling that both of them are just gonna stick with their guns here. Like, even if Meyers is trying to bank on himself, he also has leverage from the standpoint that the Raiders are in this tough-ass division to where contention might not even be possible. So if that's the goal, he may very well want to take his talents elsewhere. But are these other offenses going to treat him in the same way that the Raiders of last season did, by giving him all these damn targets? I mean, he literally had 106 targets in 2023, his most since 2021 with the Patriots, and then had 129 targets, a career high last season. is he really going to get that kind of share elsewhere? That's not a guarantee. And especially with Geno Smith being there now over guys like Aiden O'Connell, that could also help him out a little bit as well. There are a lot of different angles to look at this from. But I don't know. Here's the thing. I don't know if this will lead to a holdout situation for Jakobi Meyers. That aspect of it wasn't necessarily reported. I think he's still going to be available for week 1. So I guess it's really just going to play out on the field. If the Raiders, because the Raiders at least aren't willing to part ways with him. But Jakobi Meyers might force their hand. So if they do eventually give in over time, they'll be monitoring how he performs over the course of the season. And from there, maybe something could come out of it. Who really knows at this point? The Lions would cut Hendon Hooker, and I'm not surprised by that. His preseason was just absolutely poor. And the fact that Kyle Allen, of all quarterbacks, makes the roster over him in this situation, that's just gotta be tough. I mean, they did take a chance on him by getting him, and people really believed that he was going to be the future of the team. But things have changed so much since then because Jared Goff has actually emerged as a top 10 quarterback in some people's eyes. And again, Hooker, even in limited play, has just never shown that ability. So, again, he'll probably be moved around to a different team. But as far as his tenure with the Lions goes, it's over for now. Joe Mixon would miss the first 4 games of the season because the NFL rulebook essentially states that you have to place a player off of an injured reserve list by a specific deadline. The Texans did not meet that deadline because it was I think Tuesday at 4:30, right? They did not activate him off before then. And since they waited that long, he's just going to miss that time. A lot of different teams, in fact, had that situation go down where certain players just weren't taken off of IR, and they're also going to miss the first 4 games of the NFL season. I think in Joe Mixon's case, they probably didn't do it because they don't want to waste a roster spot on a player that is still actively hurt and healing from their injury at the moment. And that was probably what the case was for a lot of other teams. So I can kind of see it from that lens. Why would you, if you're trying to make cuts for a 53-man roster, why are you going to give up an open roster spot to a player who is still not 100% and able to go in week 1? It's just not worth it. Even if you're going to miss him for the first 4 games, it's fine. There's a much better chance of him being actively healthy by that point and ready to play for you compared to trying to throw a player out in the fire and make him play through a terrible condition and then potentially have that get worse as he continues to re-injure it and re-aggravate it. Is not worth that. Now, it's going to suck. But, like I mentioned, when his initial injury report came out, it does clear up the room for Nick Chubb to kind of get a feel for the game again. I think that as a potential lead back, even in a bye committee system, Nick Chubb is still going to prove to be an elite running back in this league. Truly. He still, even if he doesn't necessarily get 1,000 yards campaigns like he had consistently done in Cleveland, he's still going to be good for about 5 yards every single carry once he gets back in that flow state of his. Like, I just can't believe that the Browns did him as dirty as they did. Seriously. And he's certainly going to make them regret that. No question. Joe Mixon will have to wait a little while longer for his season debut, but still, Nick Chubb kind of needs to hit the ground running. Like, obviously, while I can sit here and say that I believe that he's going to turn things around, the reality is that the injury bug hit him hard as hell, and he was not able to respond at all last season. You know, there were times where, I hate to say it, he was virtually unplayable. He needs to hit the ground running to start off this year. And if you can have Joe Mixon at 100% to complement that come their game following his activation off IR officially at that point, hey, man, their core in that backfield could be a nasty one. The 25th would also see a resolution to yet another holdout, because Trey Hendrickson would kind of cave in a little bit. You see, he had been looking for a proper amount of compensation relative to a non-quarterback since the market had skyrocketed post Myles Garrett's contract earlier in the offseason. And the debate between their front office and Trey Hendrickson was that they weren't willing to give him another year of guaranteed money. And as a result, he went from holding out to holding in. And they've been at this point of time for months now. But it would come to a close in the weirdest way on Monday. As they would give Trey Hendrickson a $14 million raise to $30 million for this season. And it's essentially a 1-year contract. Like, what a wild turn of events in that case. I thought we were looking for a long-term extension. And yet, all of a sudden, it's not exactly that, but this is essentially a franchise tag on the part of the Bengals. Like, what? Now, again, Trey Hendrickson himself, I saw something that stated that he initially felt as though a 1-year contract with a raise wasn't necessarily on the table for him either. So, this is completely out of left field for him, but I guess you managed to keep your core defensive piece. And honestly, if you are the Bengals, I think that's all that you can really ask for at this point. Literally, the most important defender, their best player on that side of the football that they have. They had to find a way. And find a way, even though this is very wild, they did. But let's call it what it is. It is essentially a franchise tag. You're going to have to get back to the drawing board next season about this. Because you're still going to be, like, all you did if you are the Bengals is you just essentially told them, here, nigga, take the contract. All right. It's not going to stop him from, if he has another spectacular season, a DPOY caliber season as an edge rusher for them. You don't think he's going to come back next year and try to negotiate a long-term deal for himself again? And yeah, even if he's just going to be 1 year older, like, so what? If he's putting up the production that you would want him to on your team, you're going to have this same conversation next offseason. The same one. And virtually nothing will have changed at that point, other than the fact that the extensions for T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are probably going to be in full form or near it while Joe Burrow's contract is still, I believe, going to be in play here. And I can check that out real quick, but you're still going to have a ton of money, a shit ton of money, invested in those three guys. And you are still, at this point, just staving off the negotiation process, but you're not completely avoiding it. Like, if he has another elite year, he's going to come back and ask for another long-term deal. Now, even if that one sees him ask for less guaranteed money, or at least one less year of guaranteed money now that he's a little older at this point, it still won't stop that from just causing a major issue. Because let's look at this Joe Burrow contract for next season. The salary is honestly not too crazy, but the cap hit is going to be nearly $48 million. And that's adding on top of what T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are probably going to carry against the cap as well with their respective contracts. Like, you want to just keep playing this cheap game with your superstar. All you have to do is pay him up front. That's all you got to do. You're just trying to play this weird-ass mind game with him, and you're fucking yourself over in the process. Like, I guarantee you, if he plays well enough this season, we're going to be right back in the same position between him and this Bengals front office. And at that point, things could definitely go south. Because why? A franchise tag? A prove-it deal? To a player who's already established himself as an elite defensive piece on your roster. Why? At that point, you're gonna deal with one of two things. Either you're going to have to pay him what he's worth, because you cannot keep getting away with these massive 1-year deals. It's not gonna work anymore after this. You're going to have to pay him in full, or you're going to run the risk of letting him walk. There's no in between with this. There's absolutely no in between with this. The Raiders would get a win, though. And at the same time, this could also end up affecting the Jacoby Meyers case, to circle it back there. But essentially, they would re-sign Amari Cooper to a 1-year deal. The longtime Oakland Raider, prior to his tenure as a Cowboy and a Brown and a Bill for a very short period of time, was definitely one of their franchise cornerstones, and yet they still, for whatever reason, decided to get rid of him in the first place. But it is a business, and I suppose anytime you have an opportunity to get a player of that caliber back for cheap, because initially Amari Cooper left the team, he was worth a lot more than what the team was willing to offer him at this point. They traded him at the deadline and just completely cleaned house for whatever reason. But all these years later, now that he's a bit more of a cheaper but reliable option, the Raiders are deciding to take him back. Like, it feels like Amari Cooper should retire as a Raider, yet that may not happen. Nevertheless, he at least has familiarity with some of the members of the front office. I'm not going to say he has familiarity with everyone on the team, because this team from 2018 that he was on is far, far different from what the team is now. When it comes to overall roster construction, when it comes to the coaching staff, when it comes to certain members of the front office, there's different personnel all over the place. But it would be interesting to see how he is utilized in this system. And that's where the Jakobi Meyers situation becomes even murkier than it already is. Because if you're willing to bring Amari Cooper back for the short term, do you really value Jakobi Meyers all that much? If that's the move that you're making just a few hours after you make it known that you don't give Meyers a tremendous amount of overall value. It's risque indeed. And, they're going to want to try to get Cooper as involved as possible. So again, do they feel as though Meyers will still be an important piece to the roster? They might. But if he does stay with the team, that share of receptions could diminish just a little bit because of the fact that Amari Cooper is back. I mean, yes, he made it work with Brock Bowers in his monster season. But I don't know how much more talent for cheap they can add at those positions. Because inevitably, if they do that enough, they're going to completely take away all of the potential attention from Meyers. And at that point, there wouldn't be anything stopping them from just wanting to up and leave. Simply put. Okay. The Eagles would make a couple of cuts as well. They cut both Kyle McCord and Terrace Marshall Jr. It's pretty rough for Kyle McCord. But again, he did struggle in the final postseason game. And, there were only a few redeemable moments from him across this entire preseason. I just wouldn't have been surprised to know that he would be off the team. It does suck, but, they need someone that they can truly rely on in the backup role. Yes, the fact that they're saying that about Tanner McKee is definitely a bold one. But, McCord, from what people have seen, needs a little bit of work. And while that could be okay in most circumstances in this modern day of the NFL, at the same time, Eagles are just coming off a Super Bowl contention. It's not a cut necessarily intended to, hurt McCord's feelings or anything. But they're moving in two completely different directions. They're trying to maintain a sort of dynastic run akin to the Chiefs over the past 5 or so years. They are trying to do the same thing. They don't have time to continue looking at this young talent to develop. If you're going to be a young talent, that's fine. If you can come in like the rookie cornerbacks last season in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean did, and just come out of the gates ready to play football at an elite level, they'll take a chance on you. But if there are too many question marks with their rookies, they're not going to waste that time trying to make sure they develop properly. That's not their focus right now. And since those goals don't align, that is why he's off the team. The Browns would trade Kenny Pickett to the Raiders in exchange for a 2026 fifth rounder. Look here, bro. I don't even know how you managed to get draft capital out of anything involving Kenny Pickett. I am just completely flabbergasted about that, but fine, whatever. At least the Browns are trying to pick up some more assets in terms of the draft over time. They've definitely got a stacked amount over the next few years as a result of all the moves that they have made. But as for the Raiders, man, to get Kenny Pickett in this situation is weird. I thought Cam Miller was going to be the guy. In all honesty, all preseason long, Cam Miller has shown nothing but tremendous dual threat ability and elite poise for a player that is as young and inexperienced in the league as he is. And yet you would take Kenny Pickett over that in a heartbeat? Like, yes, the experience probably plays a huge factor in that, but that can't be everything for you. It can't be. It's like, come on, man. What the hell are we doing, dude? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, come on now. And the Vikings, to cap off this wave, would trade Mekhi Blackmon to the Colts in exchange for a 2026 sixth-rounder. Now, I'm not all too familiar with who this person is. So again, same thing. Getting draft capital out of that, even if it's pretty low leverage, like that is respectable. You have to take that into consideration. But think about this. Blackmon, okay, from what I'm seeing right here, per this Pro Football Reference page of his, he is currently 26 years old and has not appeared in an NFL game since 2023. I mean, credit to him for working his way back in there to even be traded in the first place after being out of it for all this time. So he must have put together a pretty solid preseason. Maybe as a cornerback, maybe as a special teamer. There weren't too many Colts games on for me to really determine which of the two is the case for him. You can never have enough depth in either position. So I guess the Colts are content with this. It wouldn't be the first time that some kind of trade or move involving a cornerback has been engineered between these two teams. Simply, literally, man. I mean, take it all the way back to Xavier Howard eventually becoming a Colt after being a Viking for the longest period of time. It's not uncommon for them to do this, and it's pretty fucking hilarious when you think about it, actually. So credit to them. It could work out in their favor. Again, just to have someone on the back end to deploy if other cornerbacks start to go down or if you need extra bodies on special teams. I can't necessarily hate on it. I just wasn't really familiar with this game like that. The third wave would begin with a lot of different roster transactions and cuts as the Raiders would release Collin Johnson. Now, here's what I got to say about Collin Johnson. I, for one, would say that I have been very, very disappointed with his career progression. This man was an absolute beast. A beast in college. No question about it. And yet, he has not done shit in the league. He does not have hands. He is an uncoordinated route runner. And he has not been able to find permanent play with any team that he's been on at this point. He hasn't even reached 1,000 yards in his career yet. He has just 394 yards and 2 touchdowns, with the last of them being caught all the way back in 2020. That's how bad it has been for him. But again, what you always put on display in college will not translate to the NFL 100% of the time. There are going to be situations where players just fizzle out completely after having these kinds of college runs. It does happen. But man, it's just not been good for him. Like, literally. This is just the latest step in that. I don't know how many chances he would really get after this. I mean, he has not been successful as it is. He's almost 28 years old. I can't imagine that other teams would be willing to take a chance on him. Like, yes, the 6'5", 220-pound frame is great. And yet, even when it comes to him trying to be a possession wide receiver, because his speed coming out of college was always questioned. It was. But you can't even fill that role right. You have the body to make it happen. And you aren't even remotely successful in that regard. A lot of these other receivers are more well-rounded at this point. And even smaller ones can fill out a possession role way better than Collin Johnson has over the course of his entire career. Why would teams at this point be compelled to take a chance on him? I don't think they should be. It's unfortunate that he got cut, but it's not hard to see why they would make the decision in the first place. The Broncos would waive Aldrick Estime. That's also a little interesting as well. Similar thing. A decent player in college. And, I mean, there were multiple Broncos games last year where he was actually getting a good amount of repetition in the game that he played in. But I suppose over the course of the preseason, as they brought in other talent, maybe Estime was a victim of just being way too content with where he was at. I'm not saying that he wasn't out there doing his best to fight hard and remain on the 53-man roster. I'm not going to say that he wasn't working his ass off trying to get that to happen. But what I can say is that other running backs were probably working far harder in the lab and putting a lot better contributions out on the field compared to Estime. And as a result, the Broncos were willing to just move on from him right there. Again, highly unfortunate stuff. I think, though, Estime will get another chance elsewhere. You know, everybody wants to talk about the shelf life of a running back. It can be real for some. And, you know, if there is a team with an older running back that might be on their way out of the NFL, I would probably expect them to pick up Estime. In fact, what's truly stopping a team in desperate need of a running back? Like, honestly, it feels cheap to throw them out, but honestly, the way that their running backs have been dropping like flies, you could say that the 49ers would be a contender to go out and get him for relatively cheap. You gotta have fresh legs in the running back room always. And a locker room like that has had that amount of running back injuries in this short time span. You were desperate to have that on your team. Okay. The Giants would waive Tommy DeVito, and they would make this out to be something crazy. Like, oh, okay. That's not incredibly surprising. I mean, you know, it is what it is. Whether it be Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart, or Jameis Winston, all three of them have proven that they can do tremendous stuff on the football field when they're given the right opportunity. Like, it's crazy, too, because they were all on cloud nine after seeing that Tommy DeVito had that one marquee preseason game. And yet that wasn't enough to keep his job safe. Not at all. But he would find a home elsewhere, you know, because there would be a follow-up to it, and he would actually become a Patriot for some odd reason. I'm sure that the hardcore Bostonians will love it. But it does nothing for them. Like, it literally doesn't make a difference for them at all. I mean, with all due respect, man, Tommy DeVito is just not a good football player. Like, yes, he's got a fan favorite sort of appeal, but he's not a guy that can truly be relied on in a backup role. I feel like you'd want to have someone far more surefire on your back end if you were the Patriots. Especially with a young Drake May at the helm. You need a true veteran presence back there. And the fact that you think Tommy DeVito is the answer to that, that's a fundamental problem that could come back to bite them in the ass. But hope it wouldn't. But there's just no shot, man. I mean, come on, dude. Like, that's gotta be some kind of joke. Really, dude? Really? Like, no, man. Okay. To circle back to the Dolphins. Yes, I gave them shit. Okay, for moving on from Mike Hilton as a part of the deals and moves and other developments in the first wave. But they would actually circle back and do something pretty solid, as they would sign Rasul Douglas. Again, Rasul Douglas has been in an interesting situation. He was undervalued as an Eagle, but ever since then, he has put together some very solid seasons with a number of different teams. He is an established journeyman at this point, and though he'll probably never get the recognition for a Pro Bowl, to have him as an additional cornerback in your locker room has proven to be beneficial to pretty much every single team he's been on. Every single team. There's no denying that. So to add him to that locker room, that is damn near perfect. He's 30 right now, actually. So happy birthday to him. And he's going to be able to spend it on a part of a team that does desperately need a quarterback. The thing is, they are relying on him to be their top cornerback. Because, to refer back to the depth chart that I had up initially, he is listed as the number one cornerback right now. And then it's Jack Jones, Brents, and Smith, like I mentioned. There's no room for error if he messes up even one time in a game, because that'll set the tone for everybody else, and there is a noticeable drop-off in ability after Douglas in that cornerback room. But that's going to be the biggest test then. It's not a long-term deal, but we're going to finally find out whether or not he is truly a number one cornerback, or at least can play like one at an elite level. If he can even do that for just a little bit in some of these ball games, could make all the difference for the Dolphins. They just need to put that on display, because if he can give them that, well, that vaunts everyone else on the team to do their job to the best of their ability, and all of a sudden, we're talking about the Dolphins being a legitimate playoff contender. Now, obviously, again, once it gets colder and colder and colder, we'll really see what they're made of. But, at least for the time being, when it comes to winning the games you need to win, that is exactly what it's going to come down to. And to have Rasul Douglas on your side as a player who could shut that down in an instant is huge for them. And it lays some sort of foundation for them to build upon in the future. Can't really say that about much of the other things that they've been doing with their cornerbacks over the last couple off seasons. It's a step in the right direction. But we have to talk about the wrong path, or not the wrong path, but a very tough one to face, because the Bucs would cut Desmond Watson. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of people know who Desmond Watson is. For those who don't, he is currently a 449-pound defensive tackle. He played at the University of Florida, and to my surprise, through watching different videos, I didn't even know this. He actually played in every single game in college. He didn't miss a snap. He didn't miss a game. And honestly, within that alone, that should tell you where the problem lies. Because you see, yes, you should be giving him credit for being able to last at that playing weight and not miss any time at all. Whereas players who are much shorter and much skinnier have missed substantial amount of time in college, to the point where some of these very people are still in college trying to fill out all of their years of eligibility. And Watson was able to get out of there after 4. You have to credit him with that, first and foremost, before saying anything else about him. That commands respect. But he would be able to get away with that in college. The speed of the game compared to the NFL, it doesn't match up. And that is the reality that a lot of players who come through the draft and maybe through undrafted free agency, that is what they experience as well. That's why only a small percentage of players who end up getting pumped into the NFL every single season, only a small percentage of them last because of that very concept. The speed and tempo of a college football game is nothing compared to the NFL. And especially in this day and age, where we constantly are looking for utilization of the faster guys at every single position. Even when it comes to the trenches, they want you to have a balance of strength in high speed for your position. Watson, even though he was able to run a solid 40 time for his weight, you are asking him to keep up in a league that is moving at a much quicker rate every single year with some of the fastest athletes in the nation. Honestly, you're asking him to try to keep up with them on a consistent basis at that playing weight, at that condition, and it just wouldn't work. It is not fat shaming to suggest that that is not a sustainable way to carve out a football career in the league. It's not. There have been players who have been around 400 pounds before, and even they had to slim down over time to keep up with generally functioning in life after football, let alone worrying about how you're going to perform later in your tenure in the NFL. So, again, Watson, I think he can eventually come back and revisit this. It does suck. You know, he is apparently from Florida, so this would have been an optimal destination for him. But he's got to spend that time, because there are probably, as a video from Microphone even stated, like, there are a number of other obstacles that could be in the way of it. It's fair to look at it that way. You know, it's not just him going on these binge eating sessions and things like that attribute to that result. There's a lot more that goes into it, for sure. But just having that time to shed it all off, it's going to do wonders for him if he approaches it properly. That's all it takes. Like, if he can get down to around, like, they mentioned that Vita Vea was like 347 or something. Now, it's definitely tough to shed, like, damn near 75 to 100 pounds. But, and if he can do that, I'm sure that a team will take him right back. And he's going to get fit as well, combined with that strength. Because he's certainly strong. No one's denying that. And he'd probably be able to make some tremendous plays on the field. But for a person that was drafted to that roster, well, picked up in UDFA, they are asking him to be a complementary piece to Vita Vea. And on plays where Vita Vea gets double teamed, inevitably, they're going to be targeting you. These ball carriers, these quarterbacks are going to be coming your way. Strength is one thing, but if they start moving from east to west, do you have the ability to counter with the same tactic? Probably not at this point, unfortunately. Hopefully he gets there. This is not the end of his football career. I'm not going to be that dramatic about it. He should be able, in a realistic setting, to have another chance. But it is all going to be on how he approaches his conditioning process and shedding at least, again, 75 to 100 pounds off his body. Who am I to suggest that that's an easy task at all? It isn't. But it might be what he needs to do in order to give himself another shot. And that's where his true passion for playing the sport will also be tested. Because if you love the game that much, that is a tremendous sacrifice that you're going to have to be willing to make. Okay. The Browns would have a couple of moves back to back here. They would trade a 2028 7th rounder to the Rams in exchange for KT Levison. This is another backup offensive lineman, and I'm not really too familiar with who this is. But I guess the Browns might honestly need a lot of depth at that position, because they still, to this point, to my surprise, when I was watching some of these preseason games on the NFL Network, for example, they had a little ticker talking about the top 101 free agents. And to my surprise, Jedrick Wells Jr. was still not signed by the team. Like, that's totally shocking news to me. But in that case, seeing as he is a tackle, you probably need to load up on that position, even if it's not, going out and hunting after players that are extremely valuable. You need somebody at this point. Like, the season's just a little bit away, and I guess they may very well be willing to move on from Tristan Wirfs Jr. So you have to get somebody at that position. One of the more important positions on your team to fill out. Even if this player might not develop into anything too crazy. Just gotta have him. They would also cut Deontay Johnson. And I'm like, good. Because with the fact that they now have Isaiah Bond on the roster, there's a lot of flexibility that they could have with him. They could put him as a slot wide receiver. They could have him emerge as a number 2 wide receiver over the course of the season. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy's their guy, and Cedric Tillman, as a bigger body, is also being recognized as a staple in that locker room. I just don't feel that there would be enough room for Diontae Johnson in the first place. And even if there was, who's to say that he's actually going to put out the kind of effort they will need over the course of this entire regular season? Because that's obviously been the thing with Diontae Johnson. Sure, he's had his years where he's been a decent number 2 guy. But over the past few years, he's just developed this reputation as a person who does not embrace the full grind of a football game and would much rather continuously fuck around doing other stuff than going to work and doing his job on the field. That's just not a reliable guy to even think about having in your locker room. And the Browns are obviously not a staple of morality with the way that they've conducted some of these moves across the past few years. They're far from the staple of morality as a football team. But I guess it's time that they just do away with that notion. So, Diontae Johnson being one of those people, okay, cool, you can be that way, but not with Cleveland. The Bengals waived Desmond Ridder. Also not surprised by that. Come on, man. These niggas had Peyton Thorne and Desmond Ridder as backups behind Burrow and Browning. No. Just no. And the fact is Desmond Ridder, not all too long ago, was really considered to be a potential savior for the Falcons franchise, is now very close at this point. I'm sure that he'll get a backup role elsewhere or something, but he is very close to being out of the NFL entirely. And it's damn, okay, holy shit. What a turn of events. That is certainly not good. Oh my goodness. Okay. The Commanders would release KJ Osborne. Same thing. They have a lot of overflow at that position. It's not to say that wide receivers outside of Terry McLaurin are all that talented, but maybe they just trust those guys far more than they do Osborne right now. I haven't kept up with too many Redskins preseason games, but I'm sure that it wasn't for nothing. He probably did get some chances in these ball games and clearly just didn't show enough at that point. And it is what it is. Tyjae Spears would also be another player who was not properly removed prior to the deadline off IR, and he's also going to miss the first 4 games of the season. It makes sense for him again, though, like it did for Joe Mixon, because he is also still dealing with an injury at this point. And, they should be solid. I mean, Tony Pollard is the fact that Cowboys fans were heralding him as the next Ezekiel Elliott is that still remains as a stretch. But he is at the very least a serviceable enough running back, maybe number 2 in that Titans offense. So, I think they can afford to have Tyjae Spears out for that time. They won't miss too much of a beat there. The Packers would release Israel Abanikanda. The Saints would also cut Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Asante Samuel Jr. is another player who is still unsigned and on that top 101 free agents list per the NFL Network, in fact. But he is going to undergo a CT scan in October. I think he was dealing with a shoulder injury during this point. And they're trying to ensure that it worked, or it will work, and that he can fully return to action afterwards. Maybe the injury itself is obviously a reason why he is unsigned at this point. Because again, why would you want to commit long term to him when you don't even know if he's going to be able to get right back out there and play for you? That's a huge risk that they would be taking. The reward is you're getting one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL, but hey, that's just me. The Bills would release KJ Hamler. The Bucks would release Kyle Trask. Meanwhile, the Saints would conduct a trade. They would send a 2028 6th-rounder to the Browns in exchange for Raheem Richards and a 2028 7th-rounder. Yet another backup offensive lineman. I really don't know. I don't know what it is at this point. It's definitely strange stuff. But again, the fact that these teams can afford it, I guess, you'll take it. That's fun. That's fair play. Caleb McGarry, though, this one is certainly going to hurt Falcons fans, man, because he literally just got paid. He just got paid. And yet again, akin to the Slater situation, yet again, after getting a contract extension, McGarry is now also going to miss the entire season due to injury. What the hell? It is a result of the same leg injury that he had, and I reported about in one of my last recaps on the NFL offseason. He was carted off with a leg injury at that time, and I guess they did say it was going to be severe, but that severe to where it's a season ender, just like that, Your blindside blocker, because again, Penix Jr. is obviously left-handed. He's not going to see his right side when dropping back. You lose that in an instant. And now you have to rely on one of these other backup tackles that I was also referring to in the same video when talking about McGarry and also Norton and others on that line. You really want to rely on those other dudes. They have not been very good when it comes to their showing in the preseason as a whole. And you're putting them in charge of protecting Michael Penix Jr. Good luck with that. Good luck with that, bro. There's no shot that is gonna work well. I just don't buy it right now. I gotta be honest. It sucks though. It's truly unfortunate. The Seahawks would release Marquez Valdes-Scantling, which also makes sense. Torrey Horton for a while now had been slated to be the number 3 wide receiver on the team, and he officially got that designation when the official rosters were announced. I think it's well deserved. He came out of the gates just fucking running shit. Literally. First damn game. Making tremendous plays, running the right routes, and having seemingly good chemistry with the quarterbacks that were playing at the time. Have that showing as a rookie is definitely good. And again, the fact that he's been at Colorado State for all this time, you could imagine that he would be prepared to go early. And the fact that the Seahawks were able to get a player of his caliber late still stands as a very great move in that NFL draft. So it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to make the roster, and that left Marquez Valdes-Scantling as the odd man out here. it makes sense. Again, it's not to say that Marquez Valdes-Scantling doesn't really have anything at all to add to a roster, but at the same time, he is only good for deep ball plays. He's only good for that. I mean, the fact that this man was a leader and is an active leader, in fact, in yards per reception. Like, it's not for nothing. He can haul in a deep ball every now and then. His speed is immaculate. We understand that. But he has no hands. And if the Seahawks were going to rely on him to be a sort of slot guy for them, like, usually you want your slot receivers to be sure-handed. That has not been the case at all with Marquez Valdes-Scantling throughout his entire career. It's a problem at this point. So I can see why they would let him go. But you want to know what happens afterwards? The 49ers, the fucking 49ers in this situation. Yes, I get that they're desperate for a wide receiver, okay? I understand. I've mentioned how all of those guys are getting hurt as frequently as they have been. I understand. All right? But tell me why they decide to go and pick him up in free agency after he got cut. Why? Why the fuck do you need to go and specifically get him? Like, come on, man. Be original, dude. Anyways, the Patriots would cut Cole Strange. They should have already done this. The fact that Bill Belichick even decided to draft him was widely panned in the first place, and he has yet to prove Bill Belichick right. Now that Belichick is elsewhere, I suppose the new regime understood that Strange was not going to be a person that carried over from one to the next. This should have already happened. Like, he is just, oh man, he's porous. He's not very good. We've known that for a long time. I don't know how the Patriots just recognize this. It's absolutely embarrassing. The 49ers would go through some craziness. They did officially release Robbie Anderson, but they, along with the next team I'm going to talk about, they would cut a player and then re-sign them either to the practice squad or to the active roster. Multiple teams have been doing that, but obviously these two back-to-back kind of highlight that, as the 49ers would first cut Russell Gage Jr. and then pick him up again just yesterday. Same thing for the Falcons. They would cut Jordan Fuller just a few days ago and then re-signed him yesterday. Again, either on the practice squad or the active roster. In this case, the active roster for both guys. Why the fuck are you cutting them if you're going to take them back? What is the point? What is the point? Why are you trying to play with their emotions like that? Like, some of these people are literally fighting for their football lives. You talking about cutting them like that? Like, damn, like, okay. My goodness, man. That's just harsh, bro. There's no way, man. But all right. Aside from that, they would actually release C.J. Henderson. Again, they just recently picked him up, but they're going to let him walk, I guess. All right. The Packers, meanwhile, would release Mecole Hardman Jr. and Isaiah Simmons. The fact that Mecole Hardman Jr. would then be picked up and put on the practice squad. Think about how crazy this last year and change has been for him. Man, this is a person who was literally, you got to go all the way back a year and a half ago or so, and maybe even a little more for full context. Man was originally a Jet to start out 2023 and gets passed around to the point where he then ends up a Chief manages to catch the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl just last year. And now this season, after barely getting utilized in Kansas City, is now on the practice squad for the Packers. What a crazy turn of events for him. A guy who is now a 3-time Super Bowl champion, I should add. That's better than most people, right? As for Isaiah Simmons, that's a bit more understandable to me. He is an example of versatility being truly deceiving. You know, it does help that he is still a player who can actively be plugged into different positions on the defensive side of the ball. Certainly, you know, you combine his size and his speed, and you place that in some of these other positions where, you know, players are traditionally shorter and a lot skinnier. Like, there's an advantage that comes with that. That creates a little bit of a mismatch. But the problem is that in that versatility, he does not do any one thing well enough. They cannot rely on him to be consistent in any one aspect of his game. And that has been an issue that has ailed him since his days in Arizona. It's just gotten worse and worse from there. And at this point, Isaiah Simmons, he is 27 years old. You know, that combination could probably help him to get at least one more shot. But I don't know if he's going to be able to make this into anything long term. I just don't have faith in that. The Steelers would release Trey Sermon, and then the Lions would actually conduct a trade. They would send Tim Patrick to the Jaguars. Now, the jury's still out on whether or not they got anything back for him. I don't think they did. I think they just wanted to shut him off. Because they did report that Isaac Tesla made the 53-man roster, which I can respect that decision. He balled the hell out in the preseason. And to have that young gun in there with a crew of young gun wide receivers, that just gives him another fresh, Jared Goff, fresh and healthy weapon to utilize on that offense. But Tim Patrick is by no means a slouch. Now, yes, he's had a rough few seasons in a row. Obviously, he's been recovering from injury for most of this time, and then was used in a limited role last year. But with the Jaguars, you know, he adds another dimension. To have a player who is as big as he is, 6'5", 210. A video from Jaguar Gator 9 I was watching about this, when he reported on it, he mentioned, honestly, that the Jaguars, now with moving on from a lot of the other receivers they had in the past, Gabe Davis, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, they currently don't have a receiver that is over 6'2" at this point. Now, obviously, Tim Patrick is not going to take the top off of a defense like Brian Thomas Jr. or Travis Hunter can. But to have a sure-handed mammoth of an individual be able to come down with contested catches over the middle of the field is going to pay dividends. Because he, in theory, could take those kinds of hits. Whereas Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. may not truly be able to at the moment. They've still got to get their bodies right. They're a lot leaner, yes, but they do not have the capacity to take those big booming hits like that. You need them in healthy condition all the time. And yes, you want the same thing for Tim Patrick, but he should definitely be able to hold down the fort as that kind of player for them. He's not going to command a lot of attention on the offense all that much, but if you need a play where it's going to require something hotly contested, he'd be the guy to look towards. It's not going to show up on the stats sheet, but when you can get those plays, it makes all the difference in a football game. And the way that the Jaguars have been regressing over the past few seasons, they've got to be able to restore that kind of element to their offense again. Like, it's about time. We've just been getting crazier and crazier shit with every single wave. And this last wave 4 split in between the 27th and yesterday would be no different. In fact, far more extreme when it comes to completely changing the NFL landscape. Dead ass. I'm not going to lie to you. It started out first on the 27th. The Panthers would trade Adam Thielen, a conditional 2026 7th rounder and a 2027 5th rounder, to the Vikings in exchange for a 2026 5th rounder and a 2027 4th rounder. Yeah, a lot of draft capital getting moved around, but it is pretty good to see Adam Thielen back in a Vikings uniform. Obviously, with Jordan Addison being out, there have been reports circulating that the Vikings were looking for another complimentary wide receiver to have alongside Justin Jefferson. And obviously, there's going to be familiarity between those two. They weren't teammates for a long time, per se, but they definitely got accustomed to each other for like the couple of seasons that their careers intertwined. And he's been nothing but accomplished with that Vikings franchise. It is as simple as that, man. Like, this is a pretty storybook thing. You remember, you start all the way back in his college career. He comes out of Minnesota State, little known school there. Undrafted free agent. Gets picked up by them, has a tremendous career with them, honestly. And then that split was certainly tough. He did manage to at least get a 1,000-yard season in Carolina, but man, there's nothing like being back home with that squad and potentially with family. He could very well retire as a Viking, and he probably should. So this is a perfect deal in that regard. As far as it looks like for his contribution with the team, he's going to be what he always has been. He's more of a possession guy. He's going to be able to get you first downs, and you can rely on him to be sure-handed as well. He's not going to blow you away with speed or flashy plays, although he does have his own little highlight reel of pretty spectacular moments. That's just not the kind of receiver that he is, and frankly, he doesn't have to be, especially when Jordan Addison comes back. To have him as an ace in the hole, like, that just makes them incredibly deeper than they were at the wide receiver core last year. It is pretty interesting, though, that Adam Thielen, because I saw something, he said something like he wanted to thank Bryce Young because without him, he wouldn't have been able to get back to the Vikings. I found that very interesting. To an extent, I mean, he's right. Like, he did still have a good start to his Panthers career, even with Bryce Young going through that rough struggle in his first season. But, like, I don't know if that's the person that I would thank in this situation. That's just me personally. Nevertheless, all jokes aside, like, it's cool to see him back there. There would be an even bigger report when it comes to Rashee Rice. Yes. They had a disciplinary hearing for him on September 30th. And frankly, I don't know whether or not that is still going to stand, because the NFL would say, you know what, let's just come together. Let's just make a decision on his potential suspension right now. So yeah, on the 27th, Rice and the NFL would mutually agree to a suspension for the first 6 games of the NFL season. It is a massive loss for the Chiefs. And it is a massive loss for fantasy football owners, the dumbasses out there who, for whatever reason, decided to go and get Rashee Rice knowing that a suspension at some point or another was going to kick in. And he's definitely not going to be available right off the bat. So you got to get him off your team. You have to pick up another potentially weaker wide receiver option at this point. Like that's just was not a smart play. That's why you have to wait the process out a little bit. Because he probably was in position to have a very good season. And it is no doubt going to be affected with this. But you know what? Again, it is what comes with the territory. You know, you chose to not only, again, obviously, car crash accidents are going to happen, but you chose to create that massive scene and then run away from it without acknowledging your own wrongdoing in the case initially. That's on you. And you had to know that that was going to be used against you here in some way. So a 6-game suspension isn't that surprising. In fact, I mean, for far less at times, players have been suspended for longer. And the NFL was actually trying to push for like a 10-plus game suspension here. Now, again, if the disciplinary hearing is still in play, that could happen. But maybe at that point, they could say, all right, 6 games is enough. We'll let Rashee Rice go back and play football for them. I don't know. It's the ball's really in their court here. I'm not all too sure about what they do in this situation. But yeah, that is why you just all you have to do. If you're Rashee Rice in this situation, like, yes, you're going to want to have fun. I get it. But, bro, all you got to do is just come to work, clock in, clock out, and just handle your business off the field, bro. It did not have to reach this point. It just didn't have to. There is no reason why you should be driving reckless on the road, right? There's no reason to. It's just not something that should be done. I don't know how many times people have to say it, or how many times PSAs have to be broadcasted about it. It just shouldn't be happening. Like, I don't care if you have the money to drive around a fancy car or something like that. Like, okay, cool. You can do whatever you want, but it's gonna come with a consequence. And so this, again, at least they had a mutual agreement on it. That's definitely key to understand about this. Like, they could have just said straight up, yeah, we're going to ensure that we suspend you for the most amount of time we see fit. But they were able to trim that down, I guess. They probably still want to try to get him into that 10-plus game territory, but at least they came to a compromise about the situation. As for the Ravens, they made an incredibly great and smart move. The Ravens would sign Kyle Hamilton to a 4-year, $100.4 million contract extension. I think that makes him the highest paid safety in NFL history. It was definitely a historical contract in some capacity, and it is well deserved. Like, there may not be, in all honesty, no bullshit. Since he's entered the league, you can make the case that he has been the best safety, if not one of the best safeties, in the NFL. I mean, he's just an absolute fucking dog. Literally. We're talking about a person who played in all 17 games last year. Like, yeah, even if he had only one interception, the man is so fucking versatile. He does everything at a high level. This is where versatility is displayed at its absolute finest in Kyle Hamilton. And if Isaiah Simmons, because again, in college, he was kind of viewed the same way. If he was even 50% of the player that Kyle Hamilton was, Isaiah Simmons wouldn't even be facing a situation where he's getting cut from any team. Like, Hamilton is literally doing exactly what some of these other college prospects that are hyped up to be these all over the field sort of players. He's doing exactly what they would like to do, and much better than everyone else. He's locking you down in coverage. He's getting deep in the box to assist in run support and make every single ball carrier pay for even thinking about running it towards him. He's a monster when it comes to being able to just get the ball out at any point. Elite knows for the football. Elite knows for generally covering and also knowing when to dial up the blitz. Tremendous football IQ. Tremendous lateral quickness. When they said during the pre-draft process, before he got drafted, they were looking at his tape. They were talking about how he moved from sideline to sideline in a play against Florida State. Them niggas weren't lying. They weren't lying. That has been on full display in the NFL. And you get all of that in just his third NFL season at 23 years old. And even with him being listed at strong safety, again, they've put him in damn near every position. He's been a slot cornerback at times. He's been in the nickel. He's been a linebacker at numerous points. He's gotten deep inside the front seven and blitzed off the edge, blitzed up the middle. Like anything you're asking him to do, he's just too damn good. He's too good. So he deserves this money. You're not going to hear me complain about this. And this is a Seahawks fan talking, who is still very glad to have Mike McDonald in the first place. And while Mike McDonald certainly set a tone for him when he was still there, man, like he's still doing tremendously great work under Zach Orr. So to give him a raise right now, like that's just got to be an immaculate feeling if you are a Ravens fan right now. And it certainly looks like it's going to pay off very well in the future for them. He's got back-to-back seasons with an All-Pro team appearance, and he is a back-to-back Pro Bowler, while also having a 9th place finish in DPOY. And there is a good chance that if he does kind of have a season in terms of logging interceptions and maybe other turnovers like Kirby Joseph, for example, did last season, or Xavier McKinney, and he's adding all of this extra shit as a defensive player, what could stop him at that point from getting a Defensive Player of the Year? I do wonder, though, like, I gotta see, because I'm sure it has happened for a Ravens player. I'm sure it's happened for them before. But I will check this. I will check this real quick. Because he'd be setting a tremendous precedent. Okay, so let me see. Alright. Yeah, Terrell Suggs. If that were to happen, he'd be the first player since him to do it. And it would be a fucking well-deserved award to get. This is just a start. It's going to be interesting to see how he continues to progress. No BS, man. The Chiefs would re-sign Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which is pretty good, but they would put him on the practice squad. Man, like that's tough. That's tough. At least he's back on the winning side, I guess. But oh my goodness, like it's just bro. Like, come on, man. That's foul. Truly. I mean, I guess since we're here, we can look at the Look at the Chiefs depth chart and see who they have. I mean, obviously, Pacheco's gonna be the main guy. And ironically enough, he took that role over from him in the first place. Okay, so they have Pacheco, Hunt. They did sign Elijah Mitchell like last year when Pacheco was hurt. And they also have Rashard Smith, a rookie out of the draft. That is interesting. You know, I guess I can understand then. Like, even if I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire honestly could have a spot on that team with that list of guys, like, that decision's already been made. But again, in this time, he's just got to stay ready. Because, the minute somebody goes down, if that does happen, they're going to be calling him up and trying to make sure that he is ready to go 100%. That's just what you got to do, man. All right. The Seahawks would also release Shaquille Griffin, that is. And the Bears would, again, do another weird thing. They would cut Devin Duvernay and then re-sign him. Literally, yesterday. It's like, why are teams doing it? You're literally playing with people's emotions at that point. It's like, come on, man. That's fucked up, dude. You can't do that shit, man. You can't. It's so wrong. Like, come on now. And moving on to the big one. We had a trade. A major trade. One of the biggest ones ever. To the point where Fox Sports, maybe with a little bit of recency bias, I saw a post earlier, they ranked it as like the 5th most impactful trade of all time. I don't know how true that will come to be, but this is pretty crazy shit. Because yesterday, per Adam Schefter, that is, the Cowboys would trade Micah Parsons to the Packers in exchange for Kenny Clark and 2 first-rounders. Then, after he got traded there, the Packers would sign him to a mammoth 4-year, $188 million contract extension with up to $136 million guaranteed, incentives probably being tacked on with that, and $62 million this season. And at that point, that's when you knew that Jerry Jones fucked it. I'm going to be all over the place with this one because there's a lot to get into about it. And yet, how did we get here in the first place? With one of the most poorly executed media runs you can even fathom thinking about. Maybe not in terms of attention, because after all, Jerry Jones, over the course of this entire thing, would go on and say that he's literally driving up the buzz for certain aspects of the team by just stringing the media along into whatever fucking craziness he wants them to focus on. He wants the attention. He wants the press all over his team, whether it's for a good or bad reason. It's like, what the hell? What kind of shit is that? All this talk about not wanting to trade away Micah Parsons, and all the subliminal talk about him being injured and not being available, so that, hey, if we sign him to a contract, even if we do, there's not really going to be a guarantee of whether or not he plays. What the hell are you talking about? Just pay him. Just pay him. You're stringing it along. You're dragging it, my nigga. You're doing too much, bro. Like, CeeDee Lamb, it got so bad that CeeDee Lamb even just put out a tweet talking about no need for the extracurriculars. I'm like, I just pay the man what you own. Like, Honestly, that's really what you have to do at this point. It goes much deeper than all the tweets and all the stuff he's been saying, because there's just something fundamentally up with him. Especially when you get into like some of the later quotes that he had, the documentary and the timing of that as well, podcast interviews with Stephen A. Smith and Michael Irvin certainly don't help him either, but man, above all else, he is just a person who is truly stubborn. And while that may work as an owner, I mean, clearly they have the highest valuation in the NFL for a reason, but as a general manager, man, in 2025, to be that stubborn, it certainly worked against him here. Because you know at this point that Mulugeta, the agent in question here, literally gets the most money for his clients. There is a reason why he is regarded as one of the best agents in the business. That tactic of making sure that the player gets owed every penny that they desire has worked for his clients, at least. And has it necessarily worked out for the teams all the time? Maybe not. I mean, Jalen Ramsey, you could say, yeah. Deshaun Watson was a massive fucking flop. A massive one. You gotta blame the Haslams, though. You gotta blame the Haslams for biting the bullet and giving him that deal in the first place. All Mulugeta's job is to do is to stir the pot around. That's it. And obviously he's going to get a cut of the contract that is signed, right? So he's going to stir around the pot, and he's going to do whatever he's got to do to make sure that they get paid. And it has worked. He's made these teams submit consistently. Well, Jerry Jones, good old Jerry Jones, was not willing to do that. Now, was he? Not at all. In fact, this man repeatedly during the Stephen A. Smith podcast interview, I think this man said something like, there is no room for a third. And that the only people that should feel comfortable in the situation to negotiate a deal would be Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons. Well, I got a news flash for you, Jerry Jones. Most recent CBA mentioned, and I think that other CBAs of the past have tried to, but this most recent NFL CBA specifically outlines that people who have agents or agencies representing them need to have their agent or agencies present with them in the process of negotiating a contract. So you're telling me that by you literally in that same interview admitting that you offered him the highest contract in NFL history for a non-quarterback, you quite literally violated a key piece of the CBA. Because you don't want to have Mulugeta involved for whatever reason. Like, that's not how it works. Them damn handshake deals and shit are not gonna work. And some of that shit is probably what was going on across all of the different collusion cases that came out about the fucking league in the first place. That's not how it works. That's not how it works, man. You need to ensure that all three parties are there. There's no room for a third. What the fuck are you talking about? They literally sat down about this. You were there. Even if you voted against that, you saw this get put into motion. And from that, there is literally room, required room being made for a third party. Like, what the fuck are you doing? It just makes no sense, man. And again, maybe when he was an owner and general manager back in the day, he could get away with doing that every now and then. And it's been well documented between other contract negotiation situations involving members of the team. A lot of people bring up Emmitt Smith. Like, why exactly is this a recurring theme? He's just not trying to move on with the times and evolve. Like, this is not 1989. This is not 1995. You cannot get away with doing business in that manner. You just can't. The CBA literally doesn't allow it. And yet you're saying, fuck the CBA, fuck David Mulugeta. I'm just going to let my pride as the owner and the voice of this team completely take over and drive this process on for way longer than it needed to be. Like, it got exhausting for so many people involved at this point. People were literally trying to see where Micah Parsons would end up as a result of it. And I'm not gonna lie, to figure out that he went to the fucking Packers. Like, the rumor would circulate around, Adam Schefter would start it, they would talk about it on the Pat McAfee show and others. I thought these niggas were lying. I thought there wasn't a chance in hell that he would become a Packer, and he became a Packer. Ironically enough, one of the teams that have, for at least a decade and a half now, owned the Cowboys on the football field. Y'all remember the Dez no-catch game? Y'all remember that? Y'all remember Aaron Rodgers' heave of a pass to Jared Cook on the sideline to lead them to victory in that 2016 wild card game? Y'all remember that shit? Y'all remember in 2024, the postseason before last, actually, Jordan Love completely carving that defense up en route to a massive loss, even with the score not doing it justice. And what did Jerry Jones do after that? Because I was also watching a video from Microphone that was breaking it down. I think they had like Hard Knocks that season. Literally, a clip from that says, on account of him, rather, it might have been a tough loss, but it wasn't your fault, as he was consoling Micah Parsons in this. So how the hell did we get from that to now having to trade the best player on your team by accounts of some people? And I'll get to that in a second. The second aspect of this, think about it. For the longest time, the correlations between Reggie White and Micah Parsons have not stopped. Only other player with as much contributions to one team across their first 4 seasons has perfectly synced up with Reggie White's career as an Eagle. And yet what happened with Reggie White after a while? He requested a trade because he wasn't getting paid the money that he thought he was worth at the time. And a lot of people, as a result of that, actually credit him with starting the whole free agency thing. So where did he end up going? Green Bay. And like Reggie White, Micah Parsons, goes from an NFC East team to Green Bay to possibly carve out an even better tenure with them. Yeah, they wanted to mention that Micah Parsons did have a sack in 4 playoff games, but you could really blame the entire defense as a whole for not doing their jobs in those games. And I'm not going to say that the Packers are automatically Super Bowl contenders with getting Micah Parsons, but it does tremendously help them to make deep playoff runs. And what did Reggie White do after getting to Green Bay? He would eventually win a Super Bowl with them. There's a chance that Micah Parsons can do the same. No question about it. But I will pause to talk about the Cowboys for a second because, or at least talking shit about them. When you do think about it, the return is decent. Obviously, it looks immaculate for the Packers. I mean, you have Micah Parsons, you have Rashawn Gary. That could do wonders for Edgerrin Cooper as well. Maybe he could be used as a bit more of a rotational piece. Maybe he could become a guy that plays at the outside linebacker position. Same thing with Lucas Van Ness. Like, they have so much fucking talent in the front seven, it's completely ridiculous. And they're going to be even better than they have been on defense over the past few seasons. It's going to be a scary sight. But as far as the Cowboys go, okay, in terms of benefit for them, they take on a relatively cheap contract. Let's be honest. They put, and honestly, I gotta save that. Look, for Kenny Clark to be right in the middle of his prime and be on a 3-year, $64 million deal that he signed like last year or something, that is relatively cheap compared to this Micah Parsons contract. You know what you're getting out of Kenny Clark. He, if nothing else, yes, he has produced a decent amount of sacks over his entire career, but that is not what he's most known for. When it comes to the issues that have been ailing the Cowboys' defense, the number one problem with them has been stopping the run. What is Kenny Clark best at doing? Stopping the run. And yes, he is just one player on that defensive line. It could also affect how Osa Odighizuwa contributes to the team. But if he can bring that same element to this roster, that solves one of their biggest issues that they've been trying to get around for the longest time. And that's definitely a plus. They need more, but that is a pretty good start. Also, 2 first-round picks for a generational talent in Micah Parsons is definitely great. And, you know, I was on the record in one of the videos where this Micah Parsons news first broke into, like, negotiations and then trade talks. I was mentioning that, hey, if they were to trade Micah Parsons and get nothing in return, it would go down as an absolute crime. Well, they got a decent return. You can't say that they walked away from this with absolutely nothing, as much as you'd like to collectively as a nation, because everybody, when the Cowboys lose, man, every single American outside of Dallas is on cloud nine. But they did get a solid return in this deal. That can't be denied. But this, to get back into the talking shit portion, this is not something that should have been on the table in the first place. All you had to do was literally pay out these contracts early. And instead, by overpaying for Dak Prescott, potentially overpaying for CeeDee Lamb. Not to say that they aren't bad players and that they don't deserve the deals that they got, but by prolonging those processes, you just locked yourself into a situation where if another deal of that magnitude, no matter who it was, came into play, you would not be able to pay for it. Again, yeah, a $47 million deal and $62 million in year one. The first year, they do not have they do not have the space to make that work. They could try to pull off some of the craziest fucking cap space work and fucking magic you ever seen in your life. They will still go fucking bankrupt trying to give Micah Parsons that kind of money. They would not be able to do it. So from that perspective, yeah, you had to let him go. You were not going to compete with that. But you put yourself into that hole in the first place. You got exactly what you fucking deserved. So you can't be surprised. And even Micah Parsons said in himself, he didn't even want to leave the team. He did not want to leave the team. He stated at multiple points across his entire football career that he's wanted to be a Cowboy for life. He wanted to remain there. In spite of all the crazy shit that they be going through, he wanted to make his name specifically with that franchise. And now he doesn't even get to do that anymore because of Jerry Jones's bullshit. And it all ties back into him. Like this again, in terms of, I guess, the press, sure, this media run was fine for him, but he handled this shit poorly. He did it from the very jump. Like, what the fuck? Again, very first step was to actually conduct proper negotiations so that this was not a situation you had to face in the first place. But even then, throwing all these subliminal messages at Micah Parsons like he isn't a top tier contributor on your roster and you're trying to treat him like a fucking scrub who's oft injured when he hasn't missed that much time in his NFL career due to injury. He hasn't. He's been one of the more durable players. And with the position that he plays, it's kind of hard to be durable in this day. So he definitely should get credit for that, and yet you're trying to disparage him like he's something less than he is. The fuck? And then you're just completely disrespecting his right to an agent. Like, disrespect might be a stretch, but again, he has an agent for a reason, and he is young as shit. Do you really think that in this day and age, you're just going to be able to have a damn near 56-year age difference on him? And you call a contract agreement a simple handshake? That's not how it works in this business. It's not. It's not. And again, he gets credit as a businessman, as he should, but you should know that because you were there at these meetings when these CBAs were being negotiated between the players, the owners, and other members of the NFL. You saw this go into motion, so you should know how this shit works. And, there's no room for a third party. There's no room for a third. Like, what are you talking about, man? It is just absolutely asinine. But hey, I guess we're going to see how it gets on the playing field because, hey, this is just going to be a years-long saga between these two teams. Now, Packers play the Cowboys in the regular season on the 28th of September. Mark that game. Like, Micah Parsons, again, as I've stated in another video covering all this shit, he is going to come from this situation deeply hurt. He is a player who thrives, who is very much an emotional leader on any team that he's been on. He's been that for the Cowboys, and he could be the same way with the Packers now. And this kind of, the way this situation progressed, okay, and escalated beyond something that anyone even thought was possible. Yeah, he comes out of this as the highest paid player ever who is a non-quarterback. That certainly works. $62 million in a single year. He's going to be pulling in all of the money. You can bank that. But that isn't going to matter to him. Because as good as he already is, as great as he's already been, now he's got something to prove and an additional chip on his shoulder, while being left scarred from this emotionally. And you factor in all 3 of those things with a player of his caliber, it's a dangerous man to be playing with. He's going to want revenge. And he may very well get it immediately. He's got his shot. So that game, along with others for the Packers this season, are going to showcase a whole hell of a lot about him as a player and about what the Cowboys are going to be missing. Thank you, Jerry. The Bears would release Sean Wade. The Bengals would sign Dalton Risner. Again, they need as many pieces on that offensive line as they can get, but I don't know what made them think that Dalton Risner was a good option. And Will Howard will be placed on IR. I think his hand is still broken. He'll probably be activated later on in the season, but they just didn't want to run the risk of having to do other extreme things with him as a player. They just want to let him get the time to rest and recover from that injury. But that will do it for all of this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.